So, you know, that he's done this is really quite an achievement without any help from anyone. I think, you know, in retrospect, Rosalind Franklin was probably Asperger's, you know. She was high intelligent autism. She just didn't know how to talk to people without, you know, she didn't know how to look at faces to get social clues. So, you know, instead of being mad at her, we should have, you know, it's one thing I've learned now, that creepy people really don't want to be creepy. Yeah. So, when you get someone creepy, you know, you got to help them. Instead of, you know, just trying to knock them to the ground. So, I think by, you know, realizing the connection between intelligence and autism and so on, we may, you know how to run science better. Anyways, this was my talk earlier. Now I'll give you a little bit about management. So this was, there are two qualities to be a success if you're running a place like this. One, you've got to manage scientists, and the second is you've got to raise money. Okay. So I have two chapters. One, basically how to raise money, and the first is how to manage people. And okay, that's a picture of Cold Spring Harbor as it existed when I went there in 1969. Now, I should explain something about my personality. I'm not very tactful. I'm sort of in a hurry. And so generally it's generally thought I can't, you know, I'm terrible with people. And in fact, I've been fired several times. So that's true. And the reason I became director of the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory is that it was so bankrupt that no one would take the job. Because so it was the sort of center of American genetics, but it had no financial basis. The Carnegie Institution moved on. I was the board of trustees. And, you know, finally I said, and I tried to raise money when I was director, and then finally someone said, well, why don't you be director? And so they had no money to pay my salary. And so I said, well, I'll be director if you let me continue to be a professor at Harvard, and Harvard will pay my salary. And, you know, I'll spend 1 weekend every 3. It was very small. It didn't look like much for a job. So I wanted to save a place where she gave the interesting summer courses, which had the Cold Spring Harbor. So it was the emotional home for molecular biology. I didn't want to disappear, and you can see it's quite pretty. And the second reason was that all the scientists had left, almost all. So I could start something new without firing anyone. So generally your chief concern is how you can get rid of people. But I didn't have to do that. They left before. Okay. So I became director, and my relations at Harvard were, you know, both good and bad. You know, the president thought, you know, I was difficult. You know, I was difficult because, you know, I arrived there and the biology department was old-fashioned. It had to be changed. And I, you know, didn't want them to continue to appoint old-fashioned people. I wanted, you know, the Harvard chemistry department was the best in the world. Physics was very good. Biology was not worth talking about. Okay? And why did I take a job there? Well, I was unmarried, and I thought, well, at least I'll get an intelligent wife there. You know, if I stayed at Caltech, I would marry a secretary. Yeah. Whereas, you know, I had higher ambitions. Okay. So that's why I went to Harvard. And, yeah. And it took me a while, but I finally found an intelligent wife there. Okay. And so I slowly, we really became quite good. And by 1968, we were as good as any place. Our only competitor was Stanford or the LMB in Cambridge. So, you know, it only took about 4 good appointments, and suddenly, you know, we were world class. So Harvard was good. And, okay. And that shows you the group at Harvard. I ran it with Wally Gilbert, who afterwards got the Nobel Prize for DNA sequencing. Originally a theoretical physicist who did his PhD in Cambridge, and I met he and his wife there, and then he came back to Harvard as an assistant to Schwinger and was an assistant professor of theoretical physics when messenger RNA was discovered, and he actually found he enjoyed doing experiments more than theory. Anyways, he and I ran that, and there were a couple others, and that's a rhinoceros that you can't see in the background. That was a sort of a symbol for what Harvard was, you know, big game hunting. And you can see there's lots of pretty girls on top of it. Yeah. So, and I believed in, you know, having pretty girls in the lab, because that would keep you in the lab. You know, you weren't out some other place. There was always reason to be in the lab. So I was probably in the lab about 12 hours a day. Not doing experiments, I was sitting at my desk talking or writing. And these people were really very good. So we had a really good lab at Harvard. And, you know, it sort of ran without me. So I thought I can take it on the coast without. But anyways, the rules, you could see. I essentially became an administrator. Well, you could say why my academic career was still getting better. Not when it was, you know, beginning to go down. And so then you become an administrator. That's the usual way that happens. People sort of, you know, because being a leader is thought to be far less important than being a scientist. You know, there's prestige for being a scientist. The leader is just, you know. So, but essentially I did it when I really was a very good scientist. So I knew what to do. I had lots of ideas. So I think that, and then the other was just delegate. You know, the perfect job is you have someone else doing everything. You know, get as much help as you can from other people. Okay, so delegate is, and then the third, very important that you make all the decisions.